Hi everyone. Today's going to be a soft-spoken video. And I've got a interesting book that I think a lot of people are familiar with. How much you want to guess that I paid for this book? $20? $10? The answer is $5. Barnes & Noble was having a half off, and this was already a relatively cheap book at around $10, and I got it for $5. So now it's mine, and now I get to share it with you. How does that make you feel? It's Grimm's Fairy Tales. There might be some familiar stories in here. Might be some stories that make you think, what the hell is going on? We'll read maybe two. They're a little bit lengthy, so you have to put your listening ears on. Put them on. Take a seat. I think you'll enjoy the ride. It's got really cool illustrations. I think we'll have a lot of fun. I personally want to read Cinderella, so we're going to read Cinderella, whether you like it or not. It is on page 21. So we're going to go to page 21. Alright, now that we're on page 21, we're going to read page 21. And I do apologize if you hear any background noise. I will do my best to edit it out. But I have neighbors now, and they have little ones that like to scream and holler and play. And they have a dog as well, and isn't that fun? The wife of a rich man fell sick. And as she felt that her end was drawing near, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Dear child, be good and pious, and then the good God will always protect thee, and I will look down on thee from heaven and be near thee." Thereupon she closed her eyes and departed. Every day the maiden went out to her mother's grave and wept, and she remained pious and good. When winter came, the snow spread a white sheet over the grave, and when the spring sun had drawn it off again, the man had taken another wife. Wow. The woman had brought 2 daughters into the house with her, who were beautiful and fair of face, but vile and black of heart. Now began a bad time for the poor stepchild. Is the stupid goose to sit in the parlor with us? Imagine being called a stupid goose. How rude. Comment stupid goose if you're a stupid goose. He who wants to eat bread must earn it out with the kitchen wench. They took her pretty clothes away from her, put an old gray bedgown on her, and gave her wooden shoes. Oh my God, wooden shoes. Just look at the proud princess. How decked out is she? They cried and laughed and led her into the kitchen. There she had to do hard work from morning till night, get up before daybreak, carry winter and water, light fires, cook and wash. Besides this, the sisters did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied her peas and lentils into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them out again. In the evening, when she had worked till she was weary, she had no bed to go to, but she had to sleep by the fireside in the ashes. And as on that account she always looked dusty and dirty, they named her Cinderella. It happened that the father was once again going to the fair, and he kissed his two stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. He asked his two stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. Beautiful dresses, said one. Pearls and jewels, said the second. And thou, Cinderella, said he, what wilt thou have? Father, break off for me the first branch which knocks against your hat on your way home. So he brought a beautiful dress, pearls and jewels for his two stepsisters, and on his way home, as he was riding through a green thicket, a hazel twig brushed against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave his stepdaughters the things they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the branch from the hazel bush. Cinderella thanked him, went to her mother's grave and planted the branch on it, and wept so much that the tears fell down on it and watered it. That's depressing. I have one question. Why is the father allowing such mistreatment towards his blood daughter? Anyways, Cinderella thanked him, went to her mother's grave and planted the branch on it, and wept so much that the tears fell down and watered it. It grew, however, and became a handsome tree. Thrice a day Cinderella went and sat beneath it and wept and prayed, and a little white bird always came on the tree. And if Cinderella expressed a wish, the bird threw down to her what she had wished for. It happened, however, that the king appointed a festival which was to last 3 days, and in which all the beautiful young girls in the country were invited, in order that his son might choose himself a bride. Wow. When the two stepsisters heard that they too were to appear among the number, they were delighted. Called Cinderella and said, "Comb our hair for us, brush our shoes, and fasten our buckles, for we are going to the festival at the king's palace." Cinderella obeyed, but wept, because she too would have liked to go with them to the dance, and begged her stepmother to allow her to do so. "Thou go, Cinderella," said she. "Thou art dusty and dirty, and wouldst go to the festival. Thou hast no clothes, no shoes, and yet you'd dance." The English in this story is a little bit odd, so I apologize if I mess up a little bit. As, however, Cinderella went on asking, the stepmother at last said, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into the ashes for thee. If thou hast picked them out again in 2 hours, thou shalt go with us." The maiden went through the back door into the garden and called, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and clouding in and alighted amongst the ashes, and the pigeons nodded with their heads and began pick, 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 and the rest began to also pick, 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 and gathered all the food grains into the dish. Hardly had 1 hour passed before they had finished, and all flew out again. Then the girl took the dish to her stepmother and was glad, and believed that now she would be allowed to go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, thou hast no clothes, and thou canst not dance. Thou wouldst only be laughed at." And as Cinderella wept at this, the stepmother said, "If thou canst pick 2 dishes of lentil out of the ashes for me in 1 hour, thou shalt go with us." and she thought to herself that she most certainly cannot do. When the stepmother had emptied the 2 dishes of lentils amongst the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot and the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at length all the birds beneath the sky, came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the doves nodded with their heads and began pick, 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 pick. And the others also began to pick, 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 and gathered all the good seeds into the dishes, and before half an hour was over they had already finished, and all flew out again. Then the maiden carried the dishes to the stepmother and was delighted, and believed that she might now go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "All this will not help thee. Thou goest not with us, for thou hast no clothes, and canst not dance. We should be ashamed of thee." On this she turned her back on Cinderella and hurried away with her 2 proud daughters. As no one was now at home, Cinderella went to her mother's grave beneath the hazel tree and cried, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down on me." Then the bird threw a gold and silver dress down to her, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver. She put on the dress with all speed and went to the festival. Her stepsisters and the stepmother, however, did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, for she looked so beautiful in the golden dress. They never once thought of Cinderella, and believed that she was sitting at home in the dirt, picking lentils out of the ashes. The prince went to meet her, took her by the hand, and danced with her. He would dance with no other maiden, and never left loose of her hand, and if anyone else came to invite her, he said, "This is my partner." She danced till it was evening, and then she wanted to go home. But the king's son said, "I will go with thee and bear thee company," for he wished to see to whom the beautiful maiden belonged. She escaped from him, however, and sprang into the pigeon house. The king's son waited until her father came, and then he told him that the stranger maiden had leaped into the pigeon house. The old man thought, "Can it be Cinderella?" And they had to bring him an axe and a pickaxe that he might hew the pigeon house to pieces, but no one was inside it. And when they got home, Cinderella lay in her dirty clothes among the ashes, and a dim little oil lamp was burning on the mantelpiece, for Cinderella had jumped quickly down from the back of the pigeon house and had run to the little hazel tree, and there she had taken off her beautiful clothes and laid them on the grave, and the bird had taken them away again, and then she had placed herself in the kitchen amongst the ashes in her grey gown. Next day, when the festival began afresh, and her parents and the stepsisters had gone once more, Cinderella went to the hazel tree and said, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down over me." I want to show you guys a little picture. There she is in her little dress. I guess I should say big dress. Very pretty indeed. A lot of things that don't make sense to me in the story, but we're gonna keep going. Then the bird threw down a much more beautiful dress than on the preceding day, and when Cinderella appeared at the festival in the dress, everyone was astonished at her beauty. The king's son had waited until she came, and instantly took her by the hand and danced with her, and no one but her. When others came and invited her, he said, "She is my partner." When the evening came, she wished to leave, and the king's son followed her, and wanted to see into which house she went. But she sprang away from him and into the garden behind the house. Therein stood a beautiful, tall tree, on which hung the most magnificent pears. She clambered so nimbly between the branches like a squirrel that the king's son did not know where she was gone. He waited until her father came and said to him, "The stranger maiden has escaped from me, and I believe she has climbed up the pear tree." The father thought, "Can it be Cinderella?" and had an axe brought and cut the tree down, but no one was on it. And when they got into the kitchen, Cinderella lay there amongst the ashes as usual, for she had jumped down on the other side of the tree, had taken the beautiful dress to the bird on the little hazel tree, and put on her great gown. On the third day, when the parents and sisters had gone away, Cinderella went once more to her mother's grave and said to the little tree, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down over me." And now the bird threw down to her a dress which was more splendid and magnificent than any she had ever had, and the slippers were golden. And when she went to the festival in the dress, no one knew how to speak for astonishment. The king's son danced with her only, and if anyone invited her to dance, he said, "She is my partner." When evening came, Cinderella wished to leave, and the king's son was anxious to go with her, but she escaped from him so quickly that he could not follow her. The king's son had, however, used a stratagem, and had caused the whole staircase to be smeared with pitch, and there, when she ran down, had the maiden left slipper remained stocking. I said that completely wrong. When she ran down, had the maiden's left slipper remained sticking. The king's son picked it up, and it was small and dainty and all golden. Next morning he went with it to the father, and said to him, "No one shall be my wife, but she whose feet fit the gold slipper." Then were the two sisters glad, for they had pretty feet. The eldest went with a shoe into her room and wanted to try it on, and her mother stood by, but she could not get her big toe into it, and the shoe was too small for her. Then the mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off. Cut the toe off. Just cut the toe off. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no need to go on foot." The maiden cut the toe off, forced the foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. Then he took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. How does he not know what she looks like? They were, however, obliged to pass the grave, and there on the hazel tree sat the two pigeons and cried. Turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you. Then he looked at her foot and saw how the blood was streaming from it. Took him a while to notice. Interesting, not a very observant prince. He turned his horse round and took the false bride home again, and said she was not the true one, and that the other sister was to put the shoe on. Then this one went into her chamber and got her toe safely into the shoe, but her heel was too large. So her mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut a bit off thy heel. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot." The maiden cut a bit of her heel, forced her foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. He took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. But when they passed by the hazel tree, two little pigeons sat on it and cried, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." He looked down at her foot and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe, and how it had stained her white stocking. Then he turned his horse and took the false bride home again. "This also is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "There is still a little stunted kitchen wench which my late wife left behind her, but she cannot possibly be the bride." Wow, this is one horrible father. The king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the mother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty. She cannot show herself." He absolutely insisted on it, and Cinderella had to be called. The first washed her hands and face clean, and then went and bowed down before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. Then she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it into the slipper, which fit like a glove. And when she rose up, The king's son looked at her face, and recognized the beautiful maiden who had danced with him, and cried, "This is the true bride!" The stepmother and the two sisters were terrified and became pale with rage. He, however, took Cinderella on his horse and rode away with her. As they passed by the hazel tree, the two white doves cried, turn and peep, no blood is in the shoe. The shoe is not too small for her, the true bride rides with you." And when they had cried that, the two came flying down and placed themselves on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right, the other on the left, and remained sitting there. When the wedding with the king's son had to be celebrated, the two false sisters came and wanted to get into favor with Cinderella and share her good fortune. When the betrothed couple went to the church, the elder was at the right side and the younger at the left, and the pigeons pecked out one eye of each of them. Afterwards, as they came back, the elder was at the left and the younger at the right, and then the pigeons pecked out the other eye of each, and thus for their wickedness and falsehood they were punished with blindness as long as they lived. Wow! So don't be a bully. What can we take away from that story? What was the goal of that story? Don't be a bully. White doves, pretty scary, pretty powerful. The prince is not observant, views women as property. But Cinderella got a happy ending, I think. So yeah. Okay. We're gonna read one more, and it's called The Frog King. In old times, when wishing still helped me, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself, which has seen so much, was astonished whenever it shone in her face. Close by the king's castle lay a great dark forest, and under an old lime tree in the forest was a well. When the day was very warm, the king's child went out into the forest and sat down by the side of the cool fountain. And when she was bored, she took a golden ball and threw it up on high and caught it. Close by the king's castle lay a great dark forest, and under an old lime tree in the forest was a well. When the day was very warm, the king's child went out into the forest and sat down by the side of the cool fountain. And when she was bored, she took a golden ball and threw it up on high and caught it. Wow. This ball was her favorite plaything. Now it so happened that on one occasion, the princess's golden ball did not fall into the little hand which she was holding up for it, but onto the ground beyond, and rolled straight into the water. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes, but it vanished, and the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. On this she began to cry, and cried louder and louder, and could not be comforted. And as thus lamented, someone said to her, "What ails thee, king's daughter? Thou weepest so that even a stone could throw pity." She looked round to the side from whence the voice came, and saw a frog stretching forth its thick, ugly head from the water. "Ah, old water, splasher is it thou?" said she. "I am weeping for my golden ball, which has fallen into the well." "Be quiet and do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help thee. But what wilt thou give me if I bring thy plaything up again?" "Whatever thou wilt have, dear frog," said she, "my clothes, my pearls and jewels, and even the golden crown which I am wearing." The frog answered, "I do not care for thy clothes, thy pearls and jewels, or thy golden crown. But if thou wilt love me, and let me be thy companion and playfellow, and sit by thee at thy little table, and eat off thy little golden plate, and drink out of thy little cup, and sleep in thy little bed, if thou wilt promise me this, I will go down below and bring thee thy golden ball up again." "Oh, yes," said she, "I promise thee all thou wishest, if thou wilt not bring my ball back again." She, however, thought, "How the silly frog does talk! He lives in the water with the other frogs and croaks, and can be no companion to any human being." Okay, but the frog, when he had received this promise, put his head into the water and sank down, and in a short while came swimming up again with a ball in his mouth and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was delighted to see her pretty plaything once more and picked it up and ran away with it. "Wait, wait," said the frog. "Take me with thee. I can't run as thou canst." But what did it avail him to scream his croak after her as loudly as he could? She did not listen to it, but ran home and soon forgot the poor frog, who was forced to go back in his well again. The next day, when she had seated herself at the table with the king and all the courtiers, and was eating from her little golden plate, something came creeping. Splish, splash, splish, splash, splish, splash, splish, splash, splish, splash, up the marble staircase, and when it had got to the top, it knocked at the door and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." She ran to see who was outside, but when she opened the door, there sat the frog in front of it. Then she slammed the door to in great haste, sat down to dinner again, and was quite frightened. The king saw plainly that her heart was beating violently, and said, "My child, what art thou so afraid of? Is there perchance a giant outside who wants to carry thee away?" "Ah, no," replied she. "It is no giant, but a disgusting frog." "What does a frog want with thee?" "Ah, dear father, yesterday as I was in the forest sitting by the well, playing, my golden ball fell into the water, and because I cried so the frog brought it out again for me, and because he insisted so on it, I promised he should be my companion, but I never thought he would be able to come out of his water, and now he is outside there and wants to come in to me." In the meantime, it knocked a second time and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me. Dost thou not know what thou saidst to me yesterday by the cool waters of the fountain? Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." Why did I give him an accent? I shall never know. Then said the king, "That which thou hast promised must thou perform. Go and let him in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in and followed her step by step to her chair. There he sat and cried, "Lift me up beside thee." She delayed until at last the king commanded her to do it. When the frog was once on the chair, he wanted to be on the table, and when he was on the table, he said, "Now push thy little golden plate near to me, that we may eat together." She did this, but it was easy to see that she did not do it willingly. The frog enjoyed what he ate, but almost every mouthful she took choked her. At length he said, "I have eaten and am satisfied. Now I am tired. Carry me into thy little room and make thy little silken bed ready, and we will both lie down and go to sleep." I'm not gonna lie, the frog's kind of creepy. The king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, which she did not like to touch, and which was now to sleep in her pretty clean little bed. But the king grew angry and said, "He who helped thee when thou wert in trouble ought not afterwards to be despised by thee." So she took hold of the frog with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. But when she was in bed, he crept to her and said, "I am tired. I want to sleep as well as thou. Lift me up, or I will tell thy father." This is weird. Then she was terribly angry, and took him up and threw him with all her might against the wall. "Now thou wilt be quiet, odious frog," said she. But when he fell down, he was no frog, but a king's son with beautiful, kind eyes. He by her father's will He by her father's will was now her dear companion and husband. Then he told her how he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, and how no one could have delivered him from the well but herself, and that tomorrow they would go together into his kingdom. Then they went to sleep, and next morning when the sun awoke them, a carriage came driving up with 8 white horses, which had white ostrich feathers on their heads, and were harnessed with golden chains, and behind stood the young king's servant, Faithful Henry. Faithful Henry had been so unhappy when his master was changed into a frog that he had caused 3 iron bands to be laid around his heart, lest it should burst with grief and sadness. The carriage was to conduct the young king into his kingdom. Faithful Henry helped them both in and placed himself behind again, and was full of joy because of the deliverance. And when they had driven a part of the way, the king's son heard a cracking behind him as if something had broken. So he turned round and cried, "Henry, the carriage is breaking." "No, master, it is not the carriage. It is a band from my heart, which was put there in great pain when you were a frog imprisoned in the well." Again and once again, while they were on their way, something cracked, and each time the king's son thought the carriage was breaking, but it was only the bands which were springing from the heart of the faithful Henry, because his master was set free and happy. Okay, that's a weird story. I don't know if I want to read that to my children. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you sleep well. That was a journey. I'm glad you took it with me. Thank you for watching. Good night, sweethearts.